Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Megan. I am one of the advisors at Career Service. And our session today is about researching your options with your postgraduate health science degree. So really lovely to have you. We are recording the session. If I can kindly ask you, I think we all kind of understand the drill already to be muting our mics and switching off cameras. We're not many in the session I see, so please feel free if you have any questions whilst I'm presenting, just raise your hand. And you're most welcome to unmute and then ask your question or even comment. Or you're welcome to even type your questions in the meeting chat as we go along. So I think let's jump in. For those of you that weren't here a little bit earlier, in the meeting chat, I have put down a poll. So if you can kindly fill that poll out, it says, how confident are you about what you would like to do beyond your postgraduate degree? It is anonymous, so please feel free to jump in. I see there's about 17% saying extremely confident. Yeah, mostly neutral, somewhat confident. So interesting to see. So I think let's start. So what are we actually wanting to cover today? There are a few key points, but I'd just like to say that, look, Faculty of Health Sciences is really a broad and diverse faculty. And this session specifically is targeted to science students that have stepped into health sciences, possibly, having thought about starting their academic career, possibly considering pivoting that to their discipline or beyond. And we particularly kind of targeting the session to students in human biology, pathology, integrative biomedical sciences. But I think that there is a little bit for everyone. So it was quite hard to put together because of that diversity. So just to bear that in mind. And so what we are going to be covering today is in order to understand your options, you have to know what makes you employable. So there are key aspects to what makes you employable, and we'll look at that. We're going to jump into understanding your skills. And then the crux of this talk is going to be how do we actually research discipline specific as well as non-discipline specific options. So I think it's important to ask ourselves, what is the health science faculty made up of? And actually, the greatest number of postgraduate students are actually found in health sciences. And like I've just said, it is a diverse and complex faculty. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask you to jump onto menti.com. So if you can go to your browser, let me just put the code in the chat as well. So if we can jump onto menti.com, I'm going to stop presenting and then put in the code 72730809. And onto the question, which is just to get a sense of who's in the room. So which division or unit are you in or are you from? And if you are a science undergrad student, what are your majors? So let me just get that up quickly and share my screen once again. So if you can just type in, what division are you from or unit? And if you are in the science faculty at the moment, what are your majors? I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, so dermatology, I see pathology, biological anthropology, nice mix, human biology, exercise science, some neuroscience, chemical pathology. I think just the amount of responses that we're getting kind of shows you how diverse the faculty is. So what I've tried to do, as you're completing this, what I've tried to do is in the examples that I've chosen, I try to kind of bear in mind that diversity. But I think what I want to tell you is that it's understanding how I went about finding those options so that you can then implement those options or the way that I went about it to your own specific discipline, if I can put it that way. So thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to stop sharing now and we'll jump back to the presentation. Just bear with me. Okay, let's start. So what you're going to see now is, sorry, let me just get back, resume. Okay, so what you're going to be doing now is there's a graduate matching exercise that I'd like for you guys to try. There are names of past UCT students. You can see Tokozile, Musayed, Lachey. And what I'd like for you to do is to match them to their correct position or title. So you have to match the number to the correct letter. And so you'll do from letter A right through to F. And there are no right or wrong answers, of course. It's just an exercise to demonstrate a few points, which I will draw to your attention afterwards. So please feel free to type it in the chat and work your way down, the 6 names. And just to say that these are all real people that actually do exist in these positions that we have on the right-hand side of the column. So please feel free. I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll continue. So Zizo, I see you've placed D, which is Pabalo with 2 bioinformatics. So work your way down the column. Thanks for that. Okay, so there are some options. Let's see. Musahid, 5. Yeah, I think most B5, B1, forensic anthropologist. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so thank you for those that have put answers in the meeting chat, and you can see some are the same and a lot are very, very different. So I'm going to ask you this question. So what would have made this exercise a little bit easier? What would you have liked to have known about these candidates or people before you actually tried to match them to their position or title? Anyone to to suggest what are the missing links? You're welcome to raise your hand. You're welcome to put it in the meeting chat. Okay, thesis title. So knowing exactly what the research projects were about. Thanks, Darian. Anyone else? So definitely skills would be important. Nonkepo, thank you for that. Olivia, what special interests? So definitely interests. What are they passionate about? Yeah, so definitely, what you're interested in terms of your specific research interests, maybe outside interests, definitely qualifications. Javan, I see that coming through. So lots of missing information that we didn't have. So here are the correct matches. So Tokozile, who's done the undergrad in micro and biotech, she's actually the group head of leadership, learning and talent at ABSA. Musayed, the doctor, he's the founder and CEO of Vero Health. Lachey, who did medical bioscience, she's the forensic anthropologist at SAPS. It's very interesting. Pabalo, with a social science in EGS, you'll see in a moment a very interesting story. Pabalo is bioinformatics training and outreach coordinator at that specific organization, and they are involved in genetic analytic data, which is quite interesting. And then Megan Beckett is a undergrad in chemical and molecular sciences. She's a data scientist at Fathom Data, and we'll look at her journey in a little while. And then Tamlin, who did an undergrad in human life sciences, is director at Cape Biofarms. I see a hand, Zizo.
Yes, your screen was not like not sharing the screen at the time.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you. Can you repeat that, please, Zizo?
Can you please share your screen? We couldn't see what you were talking about.
Oh, I am so sorry. Are you not seeing my screen at the moment?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It says presenting. So let me just stop presenting and then try again. I am so sorry. Okay, let me try that again. So just bear with me. That's bizarre because on my side, it's actually showing that it is sharing.
I can also see your screen. I saw your screen when it was up.
Okay, so maybe just some of you. So I suggest if it happens again, then possibly jump out of the session and then come back in. Okay, let's just see. Okay, so it is resume. Okay, how about now, Zizo? Can you see my screen? Okay, so you can. Thank you so much. Okay, so where were we? So with Tamlin, she did the undergrad in human life sciences, I think at Stellies, and she is a director at Cape Biofarms, biotech startup company. And so really, really interesting story. So let's have a closer look. So Tokozile, I think, so she did her PhD in molecular and cell biology, and then she went on to IMB Business School and did strategies for leadership. And so, after her studies, she did a postdoc, but then her first job was as a consultant. But she always wanted to have a socioeconomic impact and nurture leadership. And so kind of found her way into ABSA as a group head for leadership, learning and talent. And then Musahit, a typical MBCHB candidate. He worked as a medical officer at ARV clinics, eventually went to Doctors Without Borders, was involved in training, and then stepped into, whilst being at Doctors Without Borders, into the digital content kind of space. Also went into Precult, where he was a consultant, and then he stepped into his own business, which is really interesting. So you can see there's a definite journey that he's followed. Lachey, she did her master's in applied anatomy, and was always interested in forensic science, and then obviously stepped into the victim identification center as a forensic anthropologist. And so directly related to her discipline. With Pabalo, the social science undergrad, a very, very interesting journey, did a master's in biodiversity and conservation and development, and was always passionate about education and capacity building. And he's obviously a trainer and outreach coordinator at that genetics company that I've mentioned, or data company. Megan did her honors and masters in molecular biology, but actually stepped beyond her postgraduate, stepped into the instructional and learning design area at Siyavula. And then from there, at the same company, went into learning, research and analytics, and then became a data scientist at Fathom Data. And then Tamlin, I think her story is the most interesting for me. She started her honors, did her master's in medical biochemistry, started a PhD, but decided that it was not for her, that academic route was not for her. Went traveling, taught English in Vietnam and Thailand for 2 years, and then came back to South Africa and started her own company. So again, a really interesting story. So what has this exercise actually demonstrated? It's demonstrated to us that, you don't always step into your profession that you thought you were going into at the beginning. Like you all said, there are other factors that play a role in your life, like your interests, your activities, extra courses possibly that you've done, and obviously your postgraduate studies, that you develop skills in all spheres of your life. And that just being aware of these skills really broadens up options that might be open to you. And so you do not need to limit yourself to only your discipline. And I think that's really important to be aware of. So this brings us to, key aspects of employability. We call it career edge. And it's simply because there are all these different parts that play a role to make you employable. So with career development, this one over here, it is exactly talking about, hopping on into or seeing what events are there that can broaden your understanding of how to make yourself more employable, knowing how to develop your CV, your letter of motivation, how to be great at an interview, for example. Attending events like this one is exactly what career development learning is about. And then the E in career edge speaks to emotional intelligence. So it's just understanding your emotions and others' emotions. And I think especially in this remote environment that some of us are working in, and to be able to react appropriately to people is really important. The D speaks to your degree. So obviously your academic knowledge, your skills specifically related to your postgraduate studies. Generic skills are really, really important. And I'll show you in a few more slides, just by doing your postgraduate studies, the different types of skills that you're actually developing, and that those skills can be transferred into a different context, not only your discipline specific context. And then obviously your experience, whether it's, part-time work that you've done, life experiences, that plays a really big role as well. And nothing makes sense if you don't stop sometimes and just reflect at where you've come from, where you're at currently, and where you are heading towards. And so you have to evaluate very carefully, where is it that you are going, because you can craft your way. Also, what is important is having that self-efficacy, self-esteem, and self-confidence, just having that belief that you can achieve your goals that you've set out. The confidence in your abilities. And I mean, that, you can feel really confident today. and you might be, stepping into an interview, for example, and on another day, your self-confidence is just not quite where it should be. And so you perform not as well in an interview, for example. So all of these factors really play a great role in making you more employable. So I'm not going to go on about this too much. I think that the grad matching exercise spoke about, the different parts of, how you kind of find your interests, your passions, your skills, all of that. But this is just demonstrating that be aware of where you develop your skills. Is it something that you started on the side, for example, a little I don't know, little entrepreneurship idea that you've started on the side? Thinking about what those skills have done. Have you done part-time work as a waitress, for example? And so you're developing time management skills. Have you been involved in any sporting activities, or taken up any membership in societies, for example, and taken up even leadership roles within those societies? And through all of these engagements, you actually develop skills. And I think it's really important to be able to articulate what those skills are. And so it's obviously very individual for each of you. Just on our website, so knowing where you develop your skills is important, but being able to identify those skills is really important as well. The website is helpful because you'd be able to then navigate to identifying your skills. I'll show you now. So if you click on the Students tab and you go to identifying your skills, you'll then see a drop-down box. Obviously, it's not an exhaustive list, but you most certainly can click on some of those skills and then see what the definition is. I think that's really, really important. And there are questions that are asked of you that could be asked in interviews. But what it helps you to do is to start to think, how can I now identify those skills? What examples can I think of to now then present on my CV, which is really important. This is a really helpful slide. Even if you just Google what skills are developed through postgraduate studies. And there's a whole host of skills, from critical thinking to being organized, to qualitative research, quantitative research. The exact details of your research is also important, independent thinking, and so forth and so on. So you can delve on this. I will share the PDF slides at the end, so that you have the information available as well. Another helpful website is a UK-based website. It is called Prospects. Really, really great resources that you'd find on this website as well. But what I like about it is it also identifies certain skills. And so if you were to go to the career advice, what can I do with my degree, and click on the relevant courses or programs. I clicked on biomedical sciences because I thought that was kind of most relevant. Again, what is great is it gives you job titles, and I think this is where students struggle. How do you research something if you don't have a proper title to look for? But what I really want to say is that this section, the skills section, is really great for you to be able to say, okay, so I've done this, and so I can definitely say that these are some of the skills that exist or that have developed because of the courses that I've done. So this will then obviously bring you to your CV. Now, just to say, look, your academic CV is very, very different to a discipline-specific CV or even a skills-based CV. And there are some great resources on our website, careers.uct website. So again, the Students tab, going to making applications and then checking on the CV bit, you'll see that there is a mini series, Own Your CV. There are 6 episodes. They're about like 3 minutes long. And what is great is that each section is discussed in detail. So it's a great starting point for you to start a CV. But what is key and what you always have to remember is that when you do see that opportunity, target your CV. to that specific application. There is a resource for postgraduate CVs right there, which you are also welcome to look at. And it kind of hits home the difference between an academic CV and other CVs. And then there's also the letter of motivation or cover letter, which a lot of applications will ask for. So, so here's the thing. You can decide on what are you going to be focusing on. Do you want to focus on finding work specifically within your discipline? Or are you going to be looking at skills related opportunities? And this is just to demonstrate that if you are in one kind of sector or discipline, you do not have to stay there. You know, you could go back to your postgraduate studies at some point. You could step out of that at another point. You may find difficulty finding specifically what you're looking for within your discipline. And you may have to take a stepping stone job in the meantime until you find the job that you are really wanting. So very important to know that it's not static. So this is the crux of the talk or the session, is actually how do you go about researching discipline specific options. So we'll spend a little bit of time on our website, specifically My Career, which, if some of you don't know, is a portal that you log into using your student credentials, your registration number and your password. And so I'll show you that. And then also there are certain events that might also be really helpful for you to find out some of those discipline specific options. We'll spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn and then just touch on other platforms that might exist as well. So I think before I go into the section, are there any questions thus far? No questions. Okay, so I'm going to, thanks Olivia, I'm going to move forward. So I'm not sure if all of you know about My Career, but like I said, you use your credentials to kind of log in. And what is great is that you can look for jobs, but I know that specifically for health sciences, it is quite limiting. So you're not always going to find the specific information that you're looking for when you jump into My Career. But this is just to demonstrate to you, okay? So I thought, let me keep it quite broad. Let me type in health. So it kind of is like, yeah, extremely broad. And I found, well, 8 jobs with the word health in it. So you can see the one that is, there's bursaries for medicine. But what I found to possibly important information is that's just there were 2 opportunities that I saw that might be relevant to some of you. Okay, both are from Clinton Health Access Initiative. The one's a senior associate and the one's an associate. And so if you are interested in vaccines or malaria vector control, have a look on My Career portal. But like I said, I'm very aware of how limiting My Career is for the health sciences at large. So looking at events, so remember when I spoke about the key aspects to employability, having that career development learning is very, very essential. And so I'd like to invite you to be aware of certain events that are that we do host, particularly there's something called career conversations that we have. It doesn't happen very often, but just to draw your attention to the ones that we've had thus far. And the great thing about having these sessions virtually is that they are recorded. So for those of you that have missed it and that it might be relevant, we had a career conversation on health engineering and tech. And we had one on anatomy and physiology. And last year we had biomedical sciences and, that should be pathology. And so what these career conversations are about is we have professionals that come in from these specific disciplines, and they then engage with questions that are asked of them. And students walk away really inspired with some practical advice to kind of how to go about finding their way within their specific discipline. So you're most welcome to jump onto our website and have a listen to what has happened before. Okay, so the LinkedIn is the part that is really interesting. Just to say that I am not a fundi at all with LinkedIn. We obviously use LinkedIn extensively for research purposes around careers, and this is what you can do to kind of find that information that you're looking for within your discipline. So yeah, it's kind of just dipping our toes into using the platform. For those of you that don't know, it's a professional platform that you can use, despite the fact that you are still a student. If you are interested, we do have the LinkedIn resources on our website on how to actually set up your profile. And the more you start using LinkedIn, you will kind of gauge, you know, what is essential for me to put on my profile. So what I did was I decided to look for, yeah, someone with a biochemistry background. I thought, let me have a look. And so there were millions of hits. And what I would do is I would set up my filters to keep it to South Africa and to also keep it to the school, which is University of Cape Town, UCT, because I only wanted graduates from University of Cape Town. So whether they did their undergrad with us, or whether they came and did their postgraduate, or even just short courses with UCT. And so there were many, but I chose and I saw, okay, so there is Victoria Cole. She is a research technologist at MRC. So I think most of you will know Medical Research Council. But what I want to draw your attention to is, you know, look how she's described herself. She's described herself as a research technologist. But when you go into her background, into her tertiary background, educational background, she did her honors and her master's in human genetics. And then she stepped into the MRC as a research technologist. So there are a few things that you could do here. Okay, so the first thing is you could decide, okay, so I'm going to look at MRC, and I think, okay, so most of you know about that. You can hop onto the organization's website to see what opportunities exist. But what you could also do is you could reach out to Victoria and say, look, I am doing career research and your career journey is really, really interesting. Can we have a conversation? And so Victoria can turn around and say, sorry, I just don't have the time. Or she could be very open to you, to having a conversation with you. I'll talk about that in a moment, the details about that. But if she says yes, what you'll be doing is you'll be conducting an informational interview with her. And I'll show you the resource attached to that in a moment. So moving on from Victoria, there are a few other profiles that I thought was really interesting. So Tsepo, he has a master's in biochemistry, and then he did a PhD in applied biotechnology. And he's now working at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Okay. The next person, and so there were so many, we've already seen Tamlin in the graduate matching exercise that we did earlier. And you know her background already. And then Owen, I thought was really interesting. He is a medical scientist at an organization called Bach Global Central Lab. And so what you could do is you could jump onto Google and say, okay, you know, what is Bach Labs all about? So they are Bioanalytical Research Corporation in South Africa, and they actually provide boutique clinical trials that support human research projects. And what might be interesting, if you looked at Owen's background, you know, you could think, okay, let me reach out to him and see what has his journey been like. Maybe you could always also see what opportunities exist at Bach Laboratories for you. But I think also be aware of how have they labeled or called themselves. And so again, when you start doing that research, that key search word that you put into LinkedIn becomes really, really important, because it will bring up different profiles, different organizations where these people are now working at. And so it allows you to start really digging into and getting into a specific sector that you could see yourself working in. So I said to you, I'll explain to you what informational interviewing is about. Again, it's on our website, and it's under making applications, specifically, sorry, not, yeah, making applications under the interview section. And informational interviewing, if you think back to high school, a lot of you would probably have done the job shadowing. So it's obviously a very sophisticated way of getting information um, from the person, which you can then use in your research. At the end of that conversation, if it went really well and you had a good gut feel about the person, what the person told you about the organization that they're working at, you could potentially ask them whether you could leave your CV with them. So you're not asking for a job, but what you are asking for is that if there are opportunities that become available in the future, that they keep you in mind. And so they can flag the fact that, okay, you know, we might be looking for someone. And so it kind of just opens up that door a little bit further for you. Okay, so what about using LinkedIn? So that's a little bit about people's profiles, finding names of organizations. So what about using the jobs search in LinkedIn? And I think this is probably the more familiar way of finding opportunities for most students. But I think for health science students, it's particularly tricky to decide what are those search words that you are looking or that you are using in your searches. And I think that's the tricky part. So I thought, okay, let me experiment and see how I can go about finding jobs if I were to have a cell biology background, if I were to be interested in cell biology. So when I typed that in and I kept it to South Africa and South Africa, it yielded 13 searches. But there wasn't much that I thought was relevant, apart from Antrim Biotech, which actually piqued my interest. And you can see that they are looking for an assay development scientist. Um, and I thought, okay, so let me go and Google Antrim Biotech as a company. And then when I did that, it actually took me to UCT's website for spin-off companies, which I actually didn't even know existed before. So that was something through kind of doing the research for this webinar I discovered. And you could actually kind of see, these spin-off companies through UCT, which ones might be applicable to you. And so I see there's Cell Life there as well. So it might be well worth, and so the Bio Cape Farm, the Tamlin Shaw graduate that I mentioned before, their company is also listed as one of those, yeah. Okay, so what about broadening that research term? So I thought, okay, let's try laboratory, and there were 208 results, and obviously very non-specific. And so it took a lot of time to kind of wade through all of that information, those job opportunities. Some of them were completely not relevant, but what I did find, and I thought this was quite interesting, was that IQ Via, I'm not sure how they pronounce that, is looking for a clinical research associate. And so I'm just drawing your attention to some of the highlighted words. And so if you think back to thinking about how are you going to present yourself if you were to be interested in this specific opportunity, let's say, just out of interest, how are you going to then target your CV to actually become or to be shortlisted by this company? And so those highlighted words are really important. And I would suggest that, again, for you, when you do see those opportunities and you've developed your CV and also your letter of motivation, try to target it specifically to that application. Book a one-on-one session with an advisor at Careers so that we can kind of help you to make your CV as targeted as possible so that you actually get noticed and shortlisted. And then it's also then when that happens to come back to us and say, look, let's prepare for an interview. How can I do that? Okay, so moving on from there. Okay, just out of interest, IQ Via is a global company. They use data, tech, and advanced analytics. Yeah, to help drive healthcare forward. But moving on from there, I thought, okay, so let me now use clinical research as a term. And there were 249 results. And then Arum Institute came up, an African organization dedicated to researching, supporting, implementing innovative, integrated approaches to global health. And you can go and Google that organization. PSI, another clinical research organization, and then ICON, a South African healthcare company involved in cancer treatment. So again, it's just knowing how, what are those search words that you're using to find those opportunities that you may be interested in. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware of ResearchGate. I'm not very familiar with ResearchGate, but I see that they do advertise some opportunities on that platform. And then on the right-hand side, there are some specifically medical platforms that you might look at as well, like NGO and Medical Brief specifically. Okay, so let me pause before we go on to the non-discipline specific stuff. Any questions so far? Still nothing. Okay, so I'm moving on. I'm also aware of the time, and we're on 1:45. Okay, so so now we're going to be looking at non-discipline specific options. And I think it's really important to be aware of your skills, especially those skills that are transferable. So, for example, your communication skills, which includes obviously your verbal, your writing, your presentation skills that you've developed, working as part of a team, the analytical thinking that you've had to have done because of having had done your postgraduate studies. And again, if you are wanting to pivot and you're thinking, you know what, let me see what exists for me, and you find those opportunities, please feel free to book a one-on-one session with us, so that we can help you to be as competitive as possible. I'm not sure if any of you know, but even once you graduate, for 3 years post-graduation, you can actually access the My Career portal. You can jump onto our events and you can book one-on-one sessions within 3 years of graduation, which I think is quite cool. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the guide, which I'll show you in a moment. We'll check My Career portal and then just some examples on LinkedIn again. So with the guide, it is it's a book that is published annually. You can see that all of the guides are there. And it's really cool because there are interesting articles that are helpful to read. But within the guide, we also have employer directory, where they've advertised positions, and I'm drawing your attention to a specific consultancy group, Boston. You can see, so if you were to go to the guide 2020, you can see on the left-hand side, you'll see which faculties they actually recruit from, which is quite interesting. So it's across the board, and they value the fact that they employ students that come from diverse backgrounds, which is their strength. So if you were ever interested in consulting, that might be helpful. Sorry, let me just move on from there. So the guide, I will definitely, if you're wanting to step outside completely. And then with the My Career portal, just to say that again, the words that you use to search is really, really important. So you could type in data scientist, for example. You can type in consultant. You could type in communication, and it will bring up all of those job adverts that you have those words in. And so it just kind of helps you to see what is out there. It's a lot of things that might be irrelevant, but you might find that little gem that you might be interested in. And then at the end of the session, the last slide has all of the links that I've mentioned. There is a video on how to set up your preferences on the My Career portal. So you could set up what you're looking for, and then when those opportunities become kind of advertised, you'd get emails that are related to them. That is quite useful. And then just jumping back to LinkedIn, again, through going through people's profiles. Just an example, Emma is an associate medical writer, which I thought is interesting because she's obviously using her writing skills that she's developed. So she did her honors in medical biochemistry and did a master's in cell biology. And what I found really interesting, she did a PhD in ocean and atmospheric science, which was quite surprising to me. But she started out as an academic editor for Cactus Communications. She also found herself working at CSIR. She also found herself at NHLS as a medical lab scientist, and then she took the step into being a medical writer at this company. And when you Google Apathocom, it's quite interesting. They are a medical communications company, which I thought was quite interesting. Another example, Nelusha, she is a medical scientific liaison officer at Sanofi. And so she did her PhD in medical biochemistry. She was a postdoc at WITS. And then she went off to Sanofi, which she was first a quality control data manager. And then she took on the role as a medical scientific liaison officer. And so if these are positions that are interesting to you and slightly different and just using the skills that you have, again, reach out to those profiles of people that you think, sure, this is really interesting, possibly something that I might want to look into. And so in summary, remember the skills that you develop through your degree and any other additional activities that you've been involved in. Career development learning is very, very important. It is competitive out there. And so when you see those opportunities, you have to know that you are going to be shortlisted out of the candidates that apply for those positions. So really important to have your CV, your letter top notch. And then your first job after you graduate, see it as a stepping stone. It might not be the ideal position that you want to see yourself in. But anywhere that you find yourself, you will be developing different skills and you can use those experiences to your advantage. And remembering that it's going to take time to develop your career. And if you think of your career as a journey, it kind of just changes that perspective for you to consider other options and opportunities that might be kind of just there, but you didn't know of previously before. So just to also highlight what we are having this week, for some of you that are into entrepreneurship, we are focusing on, there's lots of little talks and webinars that are related to entrepreneurship this week. Just immediately after the session, we have preparing for interviews. It's starting at 2 o'clock. And then on Thursday, no, sorry, I lie. On Friday, we're going to have a career conversation on managing your own practice. So for those health professionals, like your physios, OTs, doctors that are thinking about eventually opening up their practice. And I think that is it. And then this is the last slide. So as I said, I will share this information with you. So don't worry about that. Let me stop presenting and see if there are any questions. So let me stop recording as well.